My name is Amir B. I'm a sole proprietor and a student as well. How many of you would consider a need of achievement as single most driving force for anybody to become entrepreneur?
Yeah, so ambition, basically. Do you need for achievement or ambition, or the same, I guess, the same thing, really? I definitely think that one of the issues that came up in a panel earlier today is the British idea of effortless success does not promote entrepreneurship. When I went to the most British school, I was lucky enough to go to the mosting British school. Actually, I think I can say it now because our Prime Minister was there, to Eton. But what I found there at my time was that showing ambition was definitely not done. So I used to wake up, I'm an immigrant, so I'm from South Africa originally. So I used to have that immigrant's desire to prove oneself. So I used to wake up secretly at 5 a.m. in the morning and not tell anybody that I was swatting for my exams, because I wanted to win. The exams were a game to me. I loved it because I wanted to win.
Hi, my name's Helen from Kibbs Cocktails. I wanted to ask what the single biggest hurdle you faced when starting up your business and how you overcame it.
Anybody want to take that? Go on, Brent. No one else is answering. You better take it quickly.
What I was thinking, for us, I guess the first thing is raising money, clearly. So we decided we had to raise money rather than, so some people don't have to do that. But so without that, the next thing was without a doubt building a website. And just at the time, it was really, really hard. It still is an issue in this. It's still not as easy as people say, actually.
Okay, Deborah, single biggest issue.
I fail to remember any hurdles, and I think that is a bit of an entrepreneurial trait as well. We kind of, they're terrible at the time, and then the next week later, you've completely forgotten, you're worrying about the next thing. So I actually genuinely fail to remember hurdles, but there's a lesson in that, because things that seem huge and insurmountable, and you just think, I can't make it happen. It is amazing how if you just put your head down, you get on and you do it, you do make it happen. And, in no time at all, you've forgotten it. It wasn't quite as big and as insurmountable as you thought it was in the first place. I genuinely cannot remember the biggest hurdle.
For me, it was this issue of about doing that at the age of 34 and being surrounded in my sector by people who were at least sort of 15, 20 years older doing that. And I used to feel terribly patronised at times by people around me. I think the other kind of issue was the fact that we grew very rapidly from sort of 4 to 64 people, I think, in 2 years. And it's just that whole people thing. You have to learn how to be good at understanding people's emotions. And whatever people say, I don't think you ever quite fully work that out as a leader of any kind of organisation in the public, private or voluntary sector. It's constantly something that's on your mind. How do I get the best out of my people?
Okay, Cath.
I think for me, definitely, it was having the tenacity to hang on in there. Because when I had the original idea I had for the business, which was practical, cheerful product for the home, it took 5 years at least for that to take off. And it was and just believing in the idea and hanging in there and knowing that I'm a great believer in trying to fill a gap in the market. And if you're going to start something new, you might not have competitors. It's like you were saying with last minute or whatever. And I just had this idea I passionately believed in and just thought the time will come. I've got to keep working at it. And it wasn't till the late 90s, really, till all the vintage stuff, that kind of vintage look began to kick in.
Hi, I'm Hitul Thabani with Kids Formation. Just touching on some of the points that came up with the last answer on the qualities and the resilience and the kind of mental strength that you need as an entrepreneur, and it's linked to, I guess, the question I tweeted earlier is, does the panel think that if we do more, and starting with our schools and our education, to develop these things in children on the emotional intelligence rather than the rote and the IQ, that'll develop some of these qualities that I think we found are so important?
To give kids the confidence to do things is really the ultimate gift, isn't it? And that's from all walks of life, like we were talking about. And you have to have a certain confidence. I can only speak from personal experience. And in the end, I took the plunge to not have a salary from someone else and start my own business, thinking, I've got to do it, because if I don't want to look back in 10 years and regret it. I've got to take that risk. Actually, what helped me is I had cancer. And after I'd had cancer, I thought, how do I know what's going to happen to me? I'm going to take the risk because it's going to be worth it. If I end up, the worst thing that can happen is I'll be broke. So I'll go from that risk, judgment of risk and things, and go for it. But it's about giving people the confidence to make that choice. And whether that's how they're taught in school, about whatever it is, they needn't be an entrepreneur. They can be doing whatever they choose, like you're saying. But I think it's that.
Shaheen Ghulam Ali. Do you think there's a cultural and a generational shift in the sense that the British aren't very good at talking about cash, talking about money? When you're down the pub, people aren't talking about business and how well they're growing. People talk about sales, but not about cash collection. And the second thing is, generationally, we're not a generation where we get our pay packets at the end of the month and have to divvy up the cash for this. Are we a generation that understands cash flow, and therefore the entrepreneur in us doesn't really have the ability to grow in the same way that it did in past generations? And the second question is, a lot of entrepreneurs seem to have had that spark at an early time, and it sounds very glib, but when they started playing Monopoly, and a lot of people go back to that experience, can the panel share any of that at all?
Well, we had one early experience from shop, so I mean, should we start backwards? Any early experiences, like playing Monopoly and deciding you're going to rip everyone off?
I wasn't very good at Monopoly. No, I think there's a peculiar... I get what you're saying, because there's a peculiar disjoint, I think, between people actually running their homes. People run their homes. They have to run their homes and their lives in the same way you run a business. You've got cash coming in, cash going out. If you borrow too much, you've got to find a way of paying it back. So many similar things, but they don't relate to that. It's a peculiar disjoint between the activity, which is the very same that goes on within business, and therefore they don't feel they don't think they understand business. But it's actually no different to the way everybody lives their lives, but because it's got a different label on it, people don't think it's the same thing. And I suggest in some of the learning that people do, it's kind of connecting the stuff we do in business with the stuff that everybody does all day, every day.
Oh, hi. I'm Sue Scott-Horn. I'm the director of EGAR, Educational Games and Resources. And the BIPC centre here has really supported me with my micro business. And I'd just like to come back on something that Cath said about interns. In this country, we've got 975,000 16 to 24-year-olds out of work and out of unemployment, not in training, not in anything. A lot of them are doing nothing all day. They've got low morale, low self-esteem. They don't know where to go. My micro business, as you know when you all started, I can't afford 30 employees. And I look round, my son is paramount. He's in his 3rd year at university. He's been paramount with EGAR. And I looked at him one day and I thought, if he can do that, and we've got 975,000 of them out of work, there's more of those around. And Cath, I open my doors to interns, and I've had 6 at EGAR. And it's been the best thing I did for me, and it's been the best thing I did for them. We've got 2 into jobs, okay, and it's a win-win situation.
So, the point is that some businesses can't afford it, and it's experience at least.
I'd like to say,
yeah,
don't
exactly.
Get me wrong, I do believe in internships,
yeah,
but I think they've also become an excuse for firms to sometimes not pay kids. There's 2 different things.
No,
you
I
can
completely
take interns
understand that,
and you can, it's a double thing.
Yeah, because I've worked with interns now, and I've spent 25 years in education, so I'm very used to young people.
But you accept the latest point.
What I'm really trying to say here, Adam, if I can just say it, is what is everyone going to do? What is everyone going to do about helping these young people? Because businesses need to open their doors and do what I've done, because it is a help. Yes. Okay. And Tom will know that. Okay.
Yeah. We do that too, and we have interns in, and we actually roll them out after 3 months. So we do not pay them very well, but we help them get jobs, and that is, they would far rather be there, and they get good jobs afterwards, and we train them and make sure they're happy.
Yeah, I mean, this so-called NEAT figure, because that's what the government calls it, not in education, training or employment, which is nearly 1 million. There's nothing very neat about having, 1 million of your 16 to 24-year-olds out of work. But I just want to connect to something that I said earlier about, the sort of social contract that we've had in this country for the last 20, 30 years vis-a-vis what we as parents and politicians are encouraging our young people to do. And as I say, it's been a bit of a one-way bet, really, which has been, look, do well at school, do well at college, go to university, and the jobs will be there. That is the message that's been going out, and it's not like that anymore. And what I find really interesting about this whole debate around tuition fees, and it looks like the government might lift this cap, and it's £9,000 a year, is we're talking almost exclusively about saying, the government will advance interest-free loans for you to go, to get very indebted, to go off to education, and you've got no guarantee at a job at the end of it. But government isn't saying, we'll support young people with mentors, with entrepreneurs who've been there and bought the T-shirt, and advance some interest-free loans as an equity investment in a business. So I think we've got to have that kind of debate as a country.
Hi, I'm Victoria Ward from promroyalty.com. This question is specifically for Brent. I'm just going to ask you a question. It's quite specific to online entrepreneurship. So I'm sorry to anyone who's not in that field. Basically, with MyDeco, you've got that extremely innovative 3D room builder. And I was just wondering, before you actually put the investment into building that, how did you evaluate and mitigate the risks of another competitor just simply replicating it?
That's a really good question. And, I think that was not to be recommended. It was an insane bet. I mean, we modelled 85,000 items of furniture in 3D. I mean, it was an insane bet that's taking, as some of the Cath said, it's taken longer to pay off than we would have hoped and thought, which is normally what happens. So I was very sad. Other people around are getting crazy, sort of panicking, and I'm like, this is what happened at last minute. It took longer. Everybody gave us hell for losing lots of money in the beginning, and it does happen. But that's where the tenacity point comes in. And to be honest, being able to, we had to raise more money. Well, we were lucky enough to be able to raise more money at a good price. But the calculation of how to understand if it would, I think I just kept saying, it came from a human need for me, which is I can't visualize anything. There must be other people like me. The web isn't helping me. Why not? Which is the same rationale as I had for starting lastminute.com. And I don't believe in, I got very heartened when Steve Jobs or Jonathan Ive says, we didn't use market research. Nobody ever asked for an iPod. They don't use market research for that. So there's only so much market research can tell you. I think instincts, but then with the 3D tool, the challenge has been making it easy enough. Because to build a room like this in 3D is never going to be child's play. But then making the output good enough. And then to be honest, where we've really made it work, you're right, is licensing the technology in America, where they really get it.
Stars, does that mean that you've been able to paint it, what you've done, or have you just relied on first mover advantage? Or simply the cost of...
To patent it? Actually, no, I mean, this is, it's interesting in the IP stuff. I mean, I think we haven't really gone for patents for it. We could have probably argued that maybe there's a patent for doing it in JavaScript rather than in Flash and something sort of slightly detailed like that. I mean, for my businesses, they've been less patentable, like lastminute.com as well. They've been more about getting liquidity of supply, getting three things right at one time. So enough customers, enough liquidity of supply, and enough hard technology. You do all those three things at once, and then it's a business that's hard for other people to compete with.